I'm going to start by taking a little survey. And I know I can't see the people up in Green Bay or even out in Zoom at all, but just look around the other screens, look around up in Green Bay when you get the answers and see what the makeup of the folks are. So I want to know where you came from just generally before now, okay? So how many of you are originally from either the Fond du Lac or Green Bay area? Just raise your hand. So down here, about 3/4 of the room are from Fond du Lac area. I'm assuming not Green Bay, but okay. So how many of you are from somewhere else in Wisconsin? Okay. How many of you are from somewhere else outside of Wisconsin in the Midwest? Okay, very good. And how many of you are from somewhere other than the United States? All right, thank you. And how about this one? How many of you were not Unitarian Universalists before coming to this fellowship or the Green Bay Fellowship? The vast majority. Okay, and I'm assuming it was similar up in Green Bay. Well, that's interesting, and you'll get to why I asked you all of those things in a few minutes. Well, December is often called the season of light and hope, right? And usually, and there's a lot of religious holidays that are kind of line up with the seasonal change of the earth. And so it's not a coincidence that you have a lot of holidays from different traditions that use light and darkness as metaphors. There's Buddhism. In some cases, Buddha's birthday is celebrated in December. Hanukkah, today's the first night. Christianity, most of us, I think, come out of a Christian culture, and this is the third Sunday of Advent. Then the winter solstice is coming up next weekend, usually filled with bonfires, and then Kwanzaa is a more modern holiday. And so this year, in the season of light, I just wanted to look for something different, kind of to surprise you guys, and something that was not quite so traditional. And it dawned on me in my experience in seminary now a decade ago, I was one of the oldest people. It was my second career. I was retiring early. So most of the folks, my fellow students, were from something younger than me. And then just generally out when I'm talking with people younger, and we jokingly say that's under 50, but anyway, the Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, they are much more susceptible to neo-paganism and different traditions that maybe baby boomers weren't quite so much. Now there were. I'm not saying it was a big cutoff. So I went kind of down that path. And I Googled, well, what other religious holidays are there besides the normal? And November 30th was the first day of Advent, so that's the beginning of the season in the Christian world. And it turns out that there is, among some groups, a neo-pagan celebration of the ancient Greek goddess Hecate. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about Hecate, and I just did a little bit more research. And so the more I got into this, the stories were just fascinating, which led themselves, I think, quite nicely to using Hecate today as a focus on the season of light. And I've got a slide here with a couple of pictures I want to show you. There are two images of Hecate up on the screen. Now, thank you. So on your left is an image that I believe is at least 2,500 years old. The heyday, when Hecate was most popular, was somewhere between 2,500 and 2,900 years ago. And this was obviously in some sort of a doorway, I think, given on what you're going to hear about her. And one thing I want you to notice, there's always three images of Hecate. So if you look very carefully, you see the front image, and it looks like a pillar's coming out of her head. It almost looks like a jug coming out of her head. And then there's two on the sides. And she's always depicted with torches. And I thought, well, why doesn't she have torches there? But if you look at what she's hanging onto and go to the very top, you can see it swirls up like a flame. So there are these kind of really tall, long torches in the left-hand side that's made out of stone. On the right-hand side, the image is about 2 weeks old. I created it with artificial intelligence. And I said, give me an image. I had researched all kinds of images out on the internet, and I didn't find one that really was what I wanted. So I've dabbled now for about a month in AI, and I thought I'd try it out. So this one's 2 weeks old. And I will tell you that it is very similar in style of a romantic painting done by the 18th century English poet and painter William Blake. So I'm going to give some credit to that painting here. It didn't have the image that I wanted. But it gives you a better depiction. You can see the little, almost like 2 yellow brick roads going off in the background and the 2 torches, and just a very resolute, very stately, almost like Statue of Liberty kind of presence in this photo. So Hecate belongs in the shadowed edges of the ancient Greek world, where crossroads met and where thresholds separated the known from the unknown. She's a goddess that's older than the Olympians, older than Olympus. She was a titaness whose power remained even after Zeus and his generation took over the throne. She still was popular. And one couple of points of note. Unlike the other deities in the Greek pantheon, she did not rule a single domain. She moved freely across all 3, sky, earth, and sea. And I think, and here's why I think she's very popular, Hecate represents a mature, unapologetic, capable feminine identity that doesn't rely on patriarchal approval. I love that. I found that quote. Hecate is associated with liminality, or the in-between places. She held torches that illuminated the darkness for travelers. She guarded doorways in cities, and she stood at the intersections of choices and paths. She was invoked during rites of transformation, especially those connected with birth, death, and the mysteries in between. People honored her at Crossroads by leaving little small offerings and asking her to watch over their home, the community, and the vulnerable. Now, somewhere in my Greek mythology class in high school, I must have come across Hecate's name, but I had no memory of it. And those of you that had such a similar class, she is mentioned and has a prominent role in the story of Demeter and Persephone. So that in this, in Homeric, it's a hymn to Demeter. When Persephone vanished into the underworld, most gods looked away, unwilling to confront the powerful Hades. But Hecate heard the girl's cries, and holding her twin torches, she guided Demeter through the night in search of her daughter, eventually becoming a companion to Persephone herself and a guide between worlds, a witness to both grief and death. And so I wanted to point out the headline that I put on the top of the slide. In the old Greek imagination, this made Hecate a goddess of thresholds, choices, magic, wisdom, guiding the lost, and aiding those in transition. So to go back to the prayer to Hecate that I read, Parazzo, the author, uses the metaphor of Hecate as encouragement to engage with her darker emotions and fears. Frankly, it's probably about her concerns about entering her crone years, she calls it, her entry into middle age. And I did a little research. When she wrote that, she was turning 50. And then back to my informal survey, where I asked you all where you came from to be here. And then almost universally, you were not Unitarian Universalists before you came to this fellowship. And so a lot of that is a lot of transitions, both physically and mentally. And so I just thought that it seemed like a metaphor, like a Greek goddess, Hecate, would be of interest to you today. So that's why I picked it. So I'm going to get rid of this screen so everybody can see just me. There we go. So I wanted to do a little bit deeper dive. So now you've learned something about Hecate, this interesting mythological character that's a metaphor for a lot of different areas. So why does it have meaning for Unitarian Universalists? How can we pull it into something more present for us? And I thought about it, and then I realized I had this kind of aha moment about the history of our own flaming chalice. Because when it was created, it came from inspiration from the bowl of oil that was set on fire in Roman and Greek theaters and places of worship. And so I started going down this idea of, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of comparisons from what the flaming chalice and typically what we always think of as our symbol and this symbol. And I came up with 4 areas that I really wanted to share with you. Both are symbols of light in times of darkness. They represent light brought intentionally into shadowed places, a form of moral and spiritual illumination, if you will. So as I said, Hecate carries 2 torches to illuminate the night, guided Demeter in her search, and help travelers navigate uncertainty and danger. The history of our flaming chalice, some of you probably have forgotten it, or some of you don't even know it, but it emerged during World War II. It hasn't been around since the beginning of Unitarian Universalism 400 years ago. It came out of World War II. It was created by the Unitarian Service Committee by artist Hans Deutsch, who was an Austrian refugee from the Nazis. They met up in Paris. And Deutsch based the design on the chalices of oil that burnt on ancient Greek and Roman altars, like I said. And it symbolized offering hope, safety, and guidance during a dark time for refugees and resistance workers. And it was very, very specific for that purpose, because when the Unitarian Service Committee got to France and was trying to get as many people out of Germany and Austria as they could, there's a lot of other groups there trying to do the same thing, and no one spoke the same language. And so all the other groups had some sort of a symbol that they could put up on doors so that people would know they had arrived or that it was a safe place. So that's why he was commissioned to do this. So it literally was travelers trying to escape the darkness of Nazi Germany into the freedom and light of the rest of the world. Number 2, both serve as guides through thresholds. It's about communities navigating transitions, holding space at moments of change. Again, Hecate stood always at the crossroads, very frequently in doorways. And then I talked about the prayers would be offered during periods of transition in your life, birth and death. Our flaming chalice, if you think about it for a minute, it marks our spiritual moments. Its beginnings and endings. Its rites of passage, rites of remembrance, covenantal gatherings. Or think of it this way, the chalice becomes a ritual threshold, signaling a shift into sacred or reflective space for us. The third one is that they both represent independent and non-dogmatic wisdom. They're symbols for people who seek guidance without authoritarianism, light without dogma. She was a non-Olympian goddess. She operated completely out of the hierarchical system of the time, and she brings wisdom rooted in experience, mystery, and autonomy. And Unitarian Universalism, of course, rejects creeds and rigid dogma. And instead, we emphasize freedom of thought, direct experience, personal spiritual autonomy. None of you are on the same spiritual path, I guarantee it. And wisdom drawn from many traditions, like our Time for All Ages story about Hanukkah today. And the fourth point, they both emphasize accompaniment, not command. They honor the presence of someone over authority, guidance over control. She didn't order Demeter on what to do, she walked beside her. She didn't dictate the path, she lit the path. And in our world, the chalice doesn't convey doctrine. It creates an atmosphere for sacred searching, mutual support, community presence, and covenantal companionship. So to summarize, I think you get the point. I think they both offer a light of hope in a dark and uncertain world. But at the end of the day, the light of hope here is not about the deity or the flaming chalice. My message today is about the light of hope. It's about the season of hope. about a flame of hope shining in a metaphorical and physical darkness of our world right now. Hecate and the flaming chalice are just symbols, metaphors, or I would say portals into deeper meaning, perhaps even to the transcendent. Within Unitarian Universalism, as I said in my lead-in, it's a generational preference. And I thought about this. I think baby boomers, and I was born right on the cusp between Gen X and baby boom. I feel like I've always had one leg in each generation. But baby boomers who came to Unitarian Universalism seem to find deep meaning and comfort in the flaming chalice, and they should, and what it represents for them in Unitarian Universalism. Younger generations don't reject the flaming chalice, but they want to augment it with all kinds of other religious symbols, and they lean more and more often into earth-based metaphor and symbolism. So that's the reason I tied these two together today, to help us understand that the flame of hope and love are the central focus of our faith, not the ways we get there. So I'm going to close with just a little fun experiment. I want you to look at each other. Just turn and look at somebody near you, please. And just think about it. Elena, you can look at me. Think about it as looking into the face of hope. This is an outward manifestation, our eyes, our faces, of the light within, the flame of hope and love. We have all journeyed here today to be where we are, I think, for a reason. And we're all present here at our fellowships with these congregations for a reason. And the reason is our search for that light of hope, of peace, of love. That's the reason for the season. Blessed be and amen. Let's take a little bit of quiet time.